Welcome back to Good Sports for You, where we are talking about good sports for you. And today we are previewing the first championship series, the ALCS. We got the Mariners and the Blue Jays. It's going to be an awesome series, and I cannot wait to break it down with you guys. So we're going to start off just with kind of like my feelings, how I'm feeling about it. Then I'm going to go into the Blue Jays, talk about their offense and their pitching and how it performed in the divisional series. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the Mariners, and then I'm going to give some final thoughts and conclusions. But before we hop into it, I want to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things to help keep the channel growing. I appreciate it so much. So just starting off with my gut reactions, on the one hand, I think the biggest thing to bring up is that the Mariners played a 5-game series against the Tigers, and that last game went to 15 innings. So all of their pitching is basically like tired or exhausted. They are not going to be at full rest whatsoever. Their rotation is not the way that you want it to be. Like ideally, you would probably want George Kirby to be starting the first game, or Logan Gilbert, or Luis Castillo. Instead, you're going to be rocking with Bryce Miller, who's good, but he's not going to be one of your big dogs, you know? Whereas the Blue Jays took care of the Yankees in 4, so they have everything lined up exactly how they want it. Kevin Gausman's going to be at full rest. Trey Savage is going to be at full rest. In addition, they're going to be having pitchers coming back from the injured list who weren't able to pitch in the divisional round, like Chris Bassett, and Max Scherzer is also going to be on the roster. However, the offense for the Blue Jays will still be taking a step back because Bo Bichette will still not be playing, which is a huge, huge loss to the team, but they were able to get the job done against the Yankees. And then speaking of offense, the Mariners' offense struggled greatly against the Tigers. Now, is the Tigers' pitching better than the Blue Jays? Tarek Skubal's a lot better, but aside from that, it's probably about the same. So the questions are, is this Mariners offense, aside from Cal Raleigh, going to be able to step up to the plate? I don't know. Whereas the Blue Jays offense is just completely rolling, and now the questions are they going to regress a little bit when they're not facing the Yankees? So we'll have to see, but like gut reactions just based on all of these things, I would lean Blue Jays. I'd probably say Blue Jays in 5, maybe in 6. But the Mariners almost have that team of destiny feel, but I'm just afraid that that long, drawn-out series against the Tigers is going to be too much to overcome. So when you're looking at the Blue Jays offense, that was obviously the biggest part of their success going against the Yankees. And it came down to 3 big guys, surprisingly. So Vlad Guerrero Jr., he had one of the best series that I'd ever seen. He had an OPS above 1,600. Ernie Clement, who took off from a great season, he was able to continue that into the postseason with an OPS above 1,500. And then you also had Dalton Varsho, who kind of got banged up a little bit this season, but he was able to come out this series with an OPS above 1,400. And those 3 players alone combined for 6 home runs in those 4 games against the Yankees. So obviously, if those guys can keep it going, I don't think that the Mariners have a chance. But we'll have to wait and see if things regress back to the means, which I definitely could see. But on top of that, the rest of the lineup was hitting so well. David Schneider had an OPS of 1,000. Miles Straw, Nathan Lucas, Alejandro Kirk all had OPSs above 800. So now you're like 7 players deep, and you're like, we haven't had a single player above or below an 800 OPS, which is just absolutely fantastic. There are a couple of negatives with this Blue Jays offense, though, that I do want to note that could be concern. Is that George Springer did not have his best series. He had a 176 average with a 721 OPS. Compared to his second half of the season, that's like just absolutely dreadful. But obviously they were able to get the job done without him being that good. And then also Anthony Santander, he had a very poor season as a whole, so it's not that much of a negative, but he did have a 400 OPS, which is absolutely dreadful. He's not a good glove in the outfield if you're going to be running him in the outfield, so that would only limit him to the DH position, really. And it's like, well, George Springer isn't a good defensive outfield either, so you want to put him in DH. And then Anthony Santander, he's just been such a negative offensively this year when like that's the only thing that you're paying him for. So those are the 2 concerns that I really have with this Blue Jays offense. And like I said in my gut reactions as well, Bo Bichette being hurt is still a negative, and he's still like one of the best players on the team. So him being out will always be a negative, even if you can supplement it with players playing really well, like a Addison Barger having a multi-hit game in the final game and stuff like that. It's still a negative to not have Bo Bichette at the end of the day. When you're looking at the pitching side of things, the big guys are going to be Kevin Gausman. He pitched very well against the Yankees. And you have Trey Savage, who pitched one of the best games from a rookie that I had ever seen in the playoffs. also going to be in your starting rotation. So, like, the thing is that the Yankees offense is extremely potent. The Mariners offense is also allegedly supposed to be super potent. The starting pitching for the Blue Jays, especially those two guys, were able to shut down the Yankees very seamlessly. So will they be able to do that with this Mariners team that is admittedly a little bit different, but is still a very potent offense who has like their one superstar player in Aaron Judge or Cal Raleigh, depending on how you want to look at it, right? Now the thing is, the bullpen definitely left a little bit to be desired, but I will note basing a bullpen performance off of 4 games, I think, is a little bit unfair. They didn't get a lot of innings in. Whereas, like, the Mariners game, we will look at the bullpen because they pitched 5 games and they also had a game that went 15 innings long. So you got a lot more innings to look at. And also, the Blue Jays were so good in this series. Their offense was so good that you didn't need to put in the high leverage pitchers a lot of the times. So they were like, okay, we're good. We don't have to worry about anything. And obviously, the Yankees are going to put up runs when you're not putting in your best closers, your best relievers, and everything like that. Because it's like I said, it's like 1 inning in such a small sample size. Like if you're pitching 2 innings throughout 4 games, if you have 1 bad inning where let's say you give up 2 runs, you got a 9 ERA for this series. And obviously that's not going to look good, but it's such a small sample size. But a big positive for the Blue Jays is they're getting back Chris Bassett, who is one of their most consistent pitchers all season long. He's a good player who's going to give you innings. So that right now could be like your 3 guy because Shane Bieber didn't really do fantastic. And then you're also putting in Max Scherzer into this roster. He wasn't on the roster in the ALDS. That's a little bit of a concern. Obviously, Max Scherzer has the pedigree. He has the experience of pitching in the postseason. However, he performed poorly in September. So if you're a Blue Jays fan, you don't want to continue that into October. So that it's a positive just because you're getting more pitching, but it's a negative potentially because he hasn't been great as of late. But at a bare minimum, it's definitely going to alleviate some stress off of the bullpen, who had to pitch a decent amount in the Yankees series. The Mariners, on the other hand, are almost the complete reverse of the Blue Jays. Offensively, they were extremely poor outside of Cal Raleigh. Cal Raleigh had over a 1. OPS. He was fantastic, but he was the only player this entire series for the Mariners who had an OPS above 710. And this is a team that really marketed itself as a good offensive team, as a well-rounded offensive team, and it just simply wasn't the case for this series against the Tigers. J.P. Crawford and Jorge Polanco both had OPSs above 700. I will say, though, Jorge Polanco did have the clutch hits, so I'm willing to give him a little bit of grace. But then you look at the guys who are supposed to be your stars, your secondary stars, at least outside of Cal Raleigh. You have Josh Naylor, who had an OPS below 650, but again, with that, he picked it up late in the series. He went 6 for 10 in the last 2 games after he went hitless in the first 3 games, which is the complete opposite of Julio Rodriguez, who went 4 for 9 in his first 2 games with a home run, but after that he went 0 for 14 to get an OPS below 600. You need Julio to perform better at the end of the day. Another guy who is known to be a playoff performer, Randy Arozarena, if you can get him to his 2020 caliber, then the Mariners are definitely going all the way because he was one of the best postseason players I've ever seen. However, this postseason, he has an OPS that's below 500. Not to mention Eugenio Suarez, who has an OPS below 400. And in addition, across the entire season this season, he was absolutely dreadful at T-Mobile Park, and that only continued into the playoffs. You know that at a bare minimum, you're going to be having 2 games at your home field in Seattle, so you need Suarez to pick it up because he needs to be a key piece in this lineup if they want to go any further. The pitching, on the other hand, was really, really good. All their starters performed at a bare minimum, at least solid, with some star performances out of like Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo pitched really well, George Kirby pitched well, and those guys were also coming in relief, which in Game 5, like Logan Gilbert and Luis Castillo coming out of the pen, which I absolutely love. And looking at their bullpen was all really solid, especially in that Game 5. But I specifically want to highlight Andres Munoz, who pitched in 4 games, scoreless, 5.1 innings. He was pitching multi-inning relief throughout this series. He was so good. Like, he was absolutely locked down. The Tigers didn't know what to do with him. And that is such a key piece to have in your bullpen for you to say, if you're like bottom of the 9th, Blue Jays are coming up, you're going through the teeth of the order, we have a 1-run lead. If you can put Munoz in, and if he is as good as he was in the Tigers series, you basically know that you're going to get a win, which is absolutely like fundamental core piece of baseball right there. But they are getting even more support with Bryan Woo coming back. Bryan Woo was their #1 pitcher throughout this entire season. He pitched so well. He got hurt late in the season, so he wasn't able to pitch in the ALDS, but he is on the roster for the ALCS, although there is some uncertainty about when he's going to pitch. Is he going to start games? Is he going to be used as like an opener? Potentially even in relief, we could see him. But regardless of how you slice it, it is a huge plus for the Mariners to have Bryan Woo. There are a couple of key pieces that I want to look at for this series that I think will be the deciding factors. One, can the Blue Jays offense keep it up as well as it has? Obviously, if it does, I could see it being a series sweep, potentially 5 if the Mariners can scrounge 1. But this offense has been so good and so hot that the Mariners need to do something to slow it down. 2, can the Mariners offense pick it up at all? They were so slow outside of Cal Raleigh. You need J-Rod to do a lot better. You need Suarez to do a lot better. You need Randy to perform to his previous playoff self. If none of those things can happen, the Mariners offense is just going to be left out to dry, and it's going to be Cal Raleigh doing everything that he can. And then 3, can the starting pitching depth added on both sides going to affect anything? Obviously, Bryan Woo and Chris Bassett are both coming off of injuries. Can they add as much to the team as they did in the regular season? So as a whole, I would still lean the Blue Jays just because their offense has been so good and the Mariners offense has been so bad. I hope for a really, really good series. I'm excited for whoever wins it because both of these cities have been longing for a championship. The Mariners more so. So I kind of hope that the Mariners win, but my gut is telling me that the Blue Jays are going to take it probably in 5, potentially 6, just because they're so well rested and their offense has been clicking on all cylinders. But if you got a different opinion, comment down below, disagree with me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. That's all I got for you, and I'm out. Peace.